What up, y'all? Welcome to today's live stream. I'm gonna go ahead and start setting some stuff up. Make sure levels are right. Let's see here. Let some people get in. Alright, make sure everything's in focus. Today we're going to be painting off of the starter set from Song of Ice and Fire, the Targaryens. Let's let some people join in here. You guys are having a good week. And I hope you guys are able to hobby, because I know it gets pretty busy sometimes. I am using this new Exemplar. Pretty excited about this. The Exemplar wet palette. And I'll also be, from time to time, switching around the new, one of their also hobby holders. And I put a magnet on the inside just because a lot of these guys are magnetized, and I figured if it's on the inner part of it, it won't really mess the top. But these guys have pretty big bases, so I've already completed a few. Just kind of lay out the recipe of what I'm doing, my go-to stuff. The brushes that I'm using are the Master Touch brushes, and I have some makeup brushes for the dry brushing. So yeah, once you guys pop in, let me know. I'll start thinking about this color scheme. Even though I started a few of them, I felt like it might be good to maybe switch it up on a few units, just so that they're not so identical. I'm not using too much wash and trying to stay true to their colors as far as the faction color. So if you could see this guy, check this dude out. Let's see, where am I at? Yeah. Try to bring him up in there. Right there. This guy looks pretty cool. Already worked on some of the details. It has a few severed heads, so I kind of worked on that already. Make sure I'm in frame. And there's this side. How's it going? What's up? How are you enjoying the Joe just joined us on the chat? And how's the hero quest? He's one of the winners from the last stream, and he won the Hero Quest expansion, the Mage. Yeah, so these are the miniatures from A Song of Ice and Fire. This is the Targaryen faction, and I've already started a bunch of them. They're all pretty much, they're all based. Some of them have the armor detail, but I'm doing a lot of the dry brushing, skin tones, because some of you guys still have to get, they're like the early stages. So I thought it'd be cool to just kind of show what's the process that I take when I have to batch paint, you know, a starter set. So yeah, some of them are complete, or at least to the tabletop quality standard, but some guys do still need a lot of the details. So I'm going to kind of focus as we go, with the details and things like that. But I hope you're enjoying the Hero Quest box. I know I cracked one open, and it's pretty fun. It's a fun expansion. Well, I mean, the way the remake of it is just, it's great. And I know our other winner received his miniatures from Hero Shop 3D, so that's cool that everybody's getting all their stuff. Yeah, the original is sometimes it's kind of hard to yeah, it's hard to acquire, or I mean, there's people with pricing also. It's another thing. So the wet palette I was explaining, this wet palette is from Exemplar Hobby Holder. I'm using this is from their website also, and it's able, so you can put like a milliput. Make sure I'm in frame. Sorry. So yeah, this is for the milliput. You could stick to the top and put your miniature, but I magnetized the bottom because a lot of these guys have magnets. So yeah, it's over $1,200 for some, and that's eBay, so it's like price gouging at its best. So for this faction, yeah, these guys are magnetized. So on the hobby holder, I thought it was a good idea. Instead of putting the putty on top, I would throw a magnet so that, you know, it doesn't ruin the top on it. And if I do decide to use putty for it, I can do that. But since they're magnetized, it's so easy to just stick them on there and work, and it's so comfortable. It has a comfort fitting rest, and this is one of those things that I think is pretty neat. The unit trays, if you're not familiar with Song of Ice and Fire, this is what the unit tray looks like. So as you can see, these guys are all, I mean, this unit is all very bare minimum. It just has a little bit of the armor shine, some of the like the colors of their faction, the house. This is Targaryen, Dothraki. These are like the swords. So I started up on those guys. These are the sword masters. What's up, Preston? Thank you for joining in. So the sword masters, and I've got some screamers that I'm working on. This wet palette is, so it's the Exemplar. It's pretty wide. I feel like, I mean, if you know, in comparison to the base, it has enough room for you to kind of spread out your colors. And I already did a lot of the, like, I think I showed you one of the updated ones, but so this is what it looks like. And it still have some highlights to do, but this is like the tabletop quality, I think, to kind of leave it at that level. And there's one side of it. Yeah, I'm finally doing some Song of Ice and Fire miniatures. This is why I was just so excited to do my own take on, as far as like a channel to paint some unorthodox stuff, whether it's D&D, Song, Legion. I mean, I want to do it all, and I don't want to, you know, I know it's going to be off topic, so I want to make sure it's cool with people. And these sculpts are fun to paint. How's everything going with you guys though? Have you guys had a chance to paint? Have you guys been doing anything with modeling, or you guys been busy? I had a little progress video of what I did with the skin tones, so I'm gonna go ahead and just get some paint out that highlights what I used. For the faction color, I'm using the Pro Acryl Burgundy. This is what I used on their flags, their drapes, things like that. I just kind of seen so offside I have like a reference of a few of the Targaryen things, like the flags that they use. And I like the art from whether the book, illustrative art, and also different takes or variations of how some people have painted the factions. So I'm thinking it's like a burgundy with red highlights. The only wash I used was the Crusader skin, is like my go-to, or the Agrax Earthshade, which I have some right here. So these two tints, this is a reddish tint. The Crusader skin gives you that reddish tint. The Agrax Earthshade will give you that brown deep shadow. So it depends on what direction you're trying to go in with the hue, or like the color of contrast. So some of these guys, I'm trying to break them apart. I don't want them to all look the same. So I have some that are a little more on the redder tone, the reddish tone, or the brown earth shade. And because I'm just thinking, so I'm a big fan of like the old Prince of Persia. I know we spoke about like Conan and things like that. That's very dunes, barbarians, things like that. So I wanted to keep it within that theme. The black that I do use for all my darker shades or any black like buckles or belts, things like that, I'm using just the standard Vallejo black. So it's a mixture like my go-to paints. I'm using Vallejo, a few Citadel for the flesh, the Pro Acryls. If you guys haven't tried Pro Acryl, because I know Vallejo is a little easier to get a hold of. A lot of hobby stores have that available for them. It's easier to find. Army Painter also is easier to find in Citadel, but if you want to start branching off, I guarantee you guys would love the Pro Acryl. No painting yet, too busy. Press in. Come on, we gotta paint when everybody goes to sleep. That's what I do. Oh, I remember, Joe, you were working on the undead, the warriors. Man, that'd be so cool for you to. I haven't seen if you put it up on your Instagram or anything like that, or on the Facebook. You should put it up. I'd love to check it out if you haven't already. For some, so it's easy when we're painting for browns to mix up, especially when you're using a certain tone of brown. If you notice, on a handful of horses, I went with the reddish route. I hope you guys are able to see the different contrasts on camera, or the different, yeah, there you go. So you could see the difference of the colors. So I have a reddish brown, and then I have more of that muted dark mud brown. Since this is kind of like a dune, like the dunes, the sands, Egyptian, that kind of like that how should I say it? That's what their ethnicity, or that's where the house is built around, right? If you think Targaryen from the books or illustrative art, every time you see a Targaryen illustration, you'll see that they use a lot of tones that might mix or blend into each other. So we've run into that issue where we want to break apart our browns so that one brown doesn't run into another and it looks too muddy, or it looks like you can't separate the tones. So what I did is, like I said, a handful of the units are going to be one direction of the vibrancy of the, like how like the value of brown is going to be either the horse is dark, the skin is going to be that lighter rosy barbarian flesh. From this is actually the air model that I use as a dry brush, which seems like it's contradiction, right? Because this is the viscosity on the air paints, they dilute them down, and I know there's something similar to it, but I just love the consistency that I can just dry brush. So I'll pick some up and I'll show you what I do with the air model paints, because I also do a lot of with the model air, and there's mission model paints. So these are other airbrush paints that I've used for browns. This is the mud brown model air, and then this one they call it, what is this one? This is it's called Sangleb, right? So this is from the mission models, and these are meant to be either you pour it into your airbrush and you will use a airbrush flow improver, a flow aid, or a diluter, right? So what I like to do is I still put this on, whether it's my wet palette or a non-porous surface, kind of like a plate. If you guys don't have those plastic, I think I showed it last time. It's like a plastic little, let me see if I have one here. So it's a plastic pot. So these are the plastic pots, right? This one's for the V2 of the Redgrass Games wet palette. This is kind of like that side attachment for it. But these are non-porous. If you pour some of the model air paints for the airbrush paints into this, you'll see that it's easier for you to kind of use like I'm using the makeup brushes, right? Use the makeup brush, and you'll use a paper towel, and I can show you what I do to dry it to absorb as much moisture from that paint so that you are able to use it as a dry brush. And it's all pressure application. So if I'm gonna use it as a dry brush, I'm keeping in mind the pressure that I'm applying to the face, and I'm thinking about light sources. So if we have a light, let me show you guys. Here's your model, right? And we're using a very watered down paint that's meant for airbrush. If we're using our light sources and we see where the light hits, let me see if I can make sure that there's no real glares. All right, so the light is pretty visible. As far as like the forehead, nose, the bridge of the nose, some shoulder, chest, if you take in consideration where the light is placed, that is where the dry brush is going with the right amount of pressure being applied. Yeah, so Joe said I use mostly GW paints. I have recently started using some vallejo, and my local game shop just started carrying the pro acryls. So let me see here. So Preston asked if I've ever used the real horses as references. I do. I've looked a lot from for instance, like whatever I'm my interest. Like if I'm looking at something that's around like the Prince of Persia or like the Lord of the Rings, like the Two Towers or the Rohan horses, right? The way they have them in the movies or images of them, they give you really cool references for you to use on horses. Now, what I do with the horse skin tone is another different dry brush technique. But so like I was saying, applying the highlighted areas where that light is hitting, this is a batch painting process, right? So we still want to get through pretty quickly with it, but we want to make them look like we still want them to pop out. Some of these guys have like shoulder pads that can be a metallic shine, and so I can implement that into the process. Yeah, these wet palettes, you can get that circular. I'm sure some of you guys have seen them, the circular palettes that are the non-porous. On a wet palette it works, but you do need a paper towel on the side to kind of help you absorb a lot of the moisture that comes off. For the saddle, I mixed it up. So if I'm doing a like ochre yellow, I'm going to use their colors of the house on their like a lot of the drapery that they use. So I was just trying to get a little bit of creativity and to break apart I didn't want it to look so monotonous and the values to just look like it's all one brown model. So I'm trying to break apart the values of brown, whether it's a dark brown horse with a light. I'm not going to put a dark brown horse with a dark brown pant, dark brown boots. So, you know, this guy has the skin tone showing, black boots, ochre saddle. I'm going to do the black, like a gray buckle, and then I'll work on the face a little bit. Let's start with this guy because he has a face. There's a lot of cool things that I could show on that. So just to give you a little bit of that insight, what I'm thinking about my color scheme, or because I think last time I mentioned about having a plan or not having a plan when you start painting a miniature, right? You get a mini, you see the box art, you can go by the box art or you can do your own variation of it, right? A lot of these guys are by the box or they're not by the box, but I don't want them all to look like the same one brown unit. I want to give them a little bit more life, especially if you have your unit tray and if you accidentally mix and match them, it looks like a very organic unit. There's different colors, there's different hair on these guys. Even though some of the sculpts may look the same, you don't want to run into that situation where all the unit looks the same. I mean, if it's Space Marines, sure, you could have a bunch of blue Space Marines, and that's Warhammer, you could do that. But then there's always something different you can do to signify what your leader is. Like in Legion, you can have a unit of 6 or 5 guys, or rebels. You have a bunch of white stormtroopers, but you can make the panel on their shoulder a different like color to make them to set them off, or color the rim of the base, things like that you can add. So yeah, suggestion, if you guys have ever tried dry brushing with the regular acrylics, try it with these air model paints, whether it's the Vallejo, whether it's mission models, or the Army Painter speed paints. That they have some stuff that's like the wash, or sorry, the Army Painter airbrush models. These guys right here. So that's one thing to kind of try out if you haven't already. So then we have covered on that. They do have some jewels and gems. So for the like the cloak, there's some grays. I have my washes, reds. If I need to switch from black and create a gray, I have my this is an off-white. The white that I'm using is not straight white. I've been having an issue with white. White is cool, the highlights of it, but some of it dries. I feel like it's a great for like the highlights and things, but I've been having my thoughts on some whites, and I've recently started using this one. Let me find it here. Where did I put it? Oh, there it is. So it's an actual beige, and it's such a strong beige. It's the Army Painter, and it's the brainmatter beige, and it's off-white enough towards where you can apply it. This is what I use for the horse eyes, so which I'm gonna do also. I'm gonna dot the eyes, and you'll see what I use for that. And our local hobby store, I went to Hobby Lobby, and they had these guys, and I've been such a fan of these Master Touch. So this is the Master Touch series, and for the eyes I'm using the center, which is a it's like a 20 they call it a spotter. So that's the spotter. Call it what you will if it's cheating, but that is spot on to do dots. Like, it serves its purpose. You can use this, which is like the 0, and most brushes you could find, like Citadel has one that's a very fine line one. And then all my basing and things like that are in a size 2. Again, this is the Master Touch series. This is a size 2 round. For the they have like this belt. Forgot to put this one out. So there's a certain brown. They have a belt around their. This is bronze. These guys are carrying belts. So I'm gonna have fun with different browns and the bronze application, which let's see, gold, other brown. Okay, weapon bronzing this is like my go-to. The weapon bronze, I'll sometimes apply that on a sword. Like the handle, the hilt will be weapon bronze, and then I'll do the brush of the metallic gunmetal over it. Leather brown is another nice muted tone, which some of the horses are leather brown because I needed that darkness. Yeah, so the sizes, again, this is the layer brush size 2, and then I'll have they literally call it spotter, the one I'm using for the eyes and all the little bits. And I'll show you how I utilize this one. So this one's I don't even know if it's 20-0, like a /, and it's just a spotter, and it's a tiny fine point. And then I have my dry brushing, right? So makeup brushes, they're great. And yep, I'm gonna keep these out. Weapon bronze, I'm gonna pull this one out real quick. Hardened leather, I will apply that once I get some layers down. So I'm going into the first. So the brown I'm using for this base is, let me see here. This is just a Citadel, kind of like a snakebite leather. I'm gonna start that off with their belts. Make sure in there. Cool. Sometimes your brush, and I've been looking up different ways to sharpen things up, but your brush eventually, I've mentioned it before, the brush will get that slight kind of a curve at the front, and I use that as to the advantage, because the only way there's a way to fix it, they're synthetic brushes. So yeah, it's kind of hard to see on I'm trying to see if it focuses. So I know it a way around it is you can put it in the warm water. There's like a warm water treatment, or hot water, I should say. It's a synthetic brush, and then they reshape it. But I've been using the what's it, treacle? Let me see. This is what I use. Yeah. So this is the Professional Art Supplies. I'm trying to make sure there's no glares. Yeah, that's the hook tip, right? So I know. So this is a really good linseed oil, really good for the brush cleaning. And I will give it a few spins into this, wash it thoroughly, try to get all that moisture out, and then I'll use this here, which is the Restorer. This is really good from the company. And what it does is it actually starts to harden up, and you're able to fix that hook tip. But that's, I mean, after, it's gonna happen over time. These synthetic brushes. But I'll use it to my advantage. If it's a weird angle, I'm turning the brush into the corner. So if you can imagine a kind of like a chiseled, or the front end of lead pencil, I'm making sure, or however that point is going to be, like there's the hook, right? I never want it to be hooked up. I'm going to have it down. Yeah, I'll give you the links to all that stuff. It's pretty easy to find. If you find, I've used their stuff in the past when I would do watercolor painting. I used to do it on canvas, and that company would come up a lot when I would put in ideas for brush care. That company's it's like a well-rounded brand. They do it all. They provide all for your brush care, aftercare for brushes. But it'll harden up, and it almost like just, it really does that. It restores the front after you could heat up some water, and what you do is you will put your brush in, or you can, another way, what I would do is with the X-Acto blade, I would just cut that hook per se at the opposite side so that it comes back to a front point. But eventually, if you think about it, it's going to bend and bend, and then you're just running down the bristle, so you're just gonna be cutting it down to almost nothing. So I'm always keeping in mind where it's at. So like right now, I'm doing that. I'm spinning into the palette, making sure I could sharpen the point as much as possible, but I'm making sure if I am going into a certain area, I'm going to have that point down, not upward, because that tip you could use as precision. Yeah, these models are so cool to paint. They have great sculpts, and they're so gruesome. I mean, they are underlining what these Targaryens are. It's like any model from the Song of Ice and Fire. I mean, they did such a great job with sculpting them, and they gave all factions scary models. They all look like they're just ready for war. So yeah, I'm using the curved bottom end of it, making sure it's pointed down, and I'll go into the certain areas. There's these weird areas in between the rider, his belt, and like the horse, like the hair, the mane of it. So I'm kind of, the horse hair, I'm going right in between, and you can see I'm working the angle. The Baratheon attachment box. Yes, which one? The which one is it? Like the updated attachments? Yeah, I think it has like an upgrade of attachments. I have that. I believe I have it. The heroes that's where it's at. A lot of those heroes are. It's pretty neat how they just brought all this variation of heroes now. Yeah, Stannis Mountain. Yep. mounted. So these guys have, that's one of these things that they have little straps and a lot of little leather bits all over the place. So at first, it's just seeing this model, I said, all right, there's going to be work to be done. It's because there's a lot of, I mean, but I'm not complaining. The detail's great. Fantasy models, I feel like fantasy models are so, they're fun to paint and easy to paint, whether it's sci-fi or fantasy. Once you get into the specific like realism stuff where it's not so much as to what your mind wants it to be, now it's by the picture, right? So like the competition basing, things like that, things that are going to go up on the shelf or a competition, that's when it becomes difficult. But I feel like fantasy models are meant for you to just have fun with them. Even though I had a theme, I want them to look authentic as far as the what a Targaryen in my representation of it, like what they're coming from the sands, they're riders, they might be a little tan, so that's gonna be what I interpret it as. What up, what up, the giddy ups, these horsies. Right now I'm just getting all the stuff blocked in. Make sure you guys are go ahead and follow the channel. I have a YouTube that goes along with it, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this on after. If you are watching this on YouTube, this is directly from the live stream on Twitch. But I want to do a process, kind of a time lapse of these guys. Going into the flesh colors, just to, there's a few areas that are exposed on his back. A lot of this was based and primed with airbrush. I primed it with rattle, and then I went in with the airbrush to knock out the majority of the details. I found a recipe to do metallics, and I'm pretty happy with it. The metallics, like the armor, the plates, things like that, the sword, quick little spurts of it. But it's hard to have a true metal and not make it look like it's aluminum and too reflective, because you obviously want to create that as you go. You don't want it to come out of the airbrush, because there's a lot of airbrush paints that'll just be a little bit too shiny, and you kind of want to create that, whether it's like you're always on the quest to find something that is not too shiny, kind of a brush metal effect. And then if I want to add the highlights, I want to have the control over that. I don't want it to be because there's an actual light glare in the reflections. Now this guy has a head hanging from the side of his saddle, so I want to definitely start working on that guy. And I always wonder if they would do an Easter egg of these heads that they have, because this guy has a collection. Where's the other guy at? I wonder if it's like an Easter egg of other houses. Like this guy has a few heads on this area. How funny would it be if this is like supposed to be, I don't know, like a Lannister, a Stark, right? But you wonder if that's an Easter egg of an actual sculpt or a model that they just took the head off. I guess you could paint it that way, like this guy would be, looks like he comes out of the Lannisters. Or a Greyjoy or something. I'm using the flesh, real basic flesh tone for it. I haven't pulled out the rose yet. Brown rose is what I did use on these guys at first, and then I would wash it with either the Agrax Earthshade or Crusader Skin. Again, if I wanted to go reddish tint, I would use the Crusader Skin. The Agrax would give it that brownish, more of that brown tone. Now this guy has a beard, so, and I'm just thinking, like, how long has this guy been hanging here as a head on the side of his saddle? Is he decaying? Is he rotting flesh? Is it fresh? But we're gonna give him, I'm gonna use that flesh tone. Get just the top parts here. But this guy's brutal. He's just like carrying his trophy. And he has this cool plate where a lot of these guys have either a shoulder plate and he's in he's in shorts, leather shorts. So he has armor on his shoulder. A lot of these guys are just rolling in shorts with dangling heads. The saddle, I'm using so this is where I kind of went off the beaten path and I started using a Kimera paint. This is I don't know, it's kind of like a very lightish, it's golden brown. That's what they call it. This is made in Italy. But yeah, I like their consistency and the way it's very matte. This is only 2 coats and the turnout was like a matte finish. It wasn't too glossy like a lot of Citadel colors. They do tend to dry up, finish with that gloss. But I'm a fan of the matte because, you know, if you want to make a gloss, I've been doing a lot more gloss sprays for if I want to add that shine myself. Let's give this guy like a grayish beard as far as the hanging head. So it's already based brown, very dark brown. I'm gonna try to turn the angle so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So this is what I meant about breaking it up, and just little things like this will give it a little bit of, so it doesn't clash. So it makes it stand out. You know, the attention to detail. It's just the little things. On the tabletop, it'll look great, right? Now I'm going to darken this gray up, and I want to use it for the buckles, or actually his boots. This palette, this is all the colors I use for these guys. So if I wanted it, I just keep them within the area. I'm giving myself room to do other little blends, but I mean, if I need a refill, I know what I'm using. And the army painter palette, which I use a lot also, it's like my go-to like traveling or things like that. It's smaller, right? And I feel like I start filling it up more and more, especially when you get carried away with all the paints that you want to start adding. So it's nice to have space. These guys are, the bases I feel like they're big enough to where you don't need a holder. I'm posting kind of like a triangle, right? So I got my thumb, this is the ring finger pinky is kind of sustaining it. I got this right by the, like, posting on the side of the horse leg. This is very, very carefully. Now when you're making contact with the model, I'm making sure it's not an area that I've already just painted and I'm going to wipe off. So this is more so for just the support and resting on the side of the leg. And then I have the pinky post with my painting brush, and now it's if you will, it's just the main contacts is this right here, right? So it's kind of like a triangle. The rest is just for stability, and this is comfortable for me because then I'm able to move it around ever so slightly. If you can think of a gimbal, like this is like, you know, like a platform, right? So as you know, the boots, I'm making sure I just want to catch the shines of it, and I'm doing the gray. But posting is, then stability comes from that. You can't just grab a model like this. I mean, you can if you have palm to palm contact, but you lose your brush. Let me see. Yeah, I'm not used to posting that way. I'm used to prevent that what just happened, to like lose your brush. I'm making sure I have this movement and I have my this palm movement. You have to really the angle of your hand has to come up, so it's almost like you're just, you know, like a T-Rex, right? So I want to be more comfortable moving, knowing that I can just, like, I know my range when I'm here, right? Versus me turning my hand and coming up to that very like top posture. I feel like that has a lot to do with it too. So it's just ever so slight change of black into the onto the boot, and I mean you could see that the difference. This is kind of a glossier black, but I did use a um, this was a Citadel black. It's one of their base coats, the base black, and and it did dry up a little glossy. Hopefully with this little bit of a gray, it'll just be true to where the shines are. Now some of the stuff that I was explaining with the dry brush, I'm using the smaller makeup brush set that I got included with this. It was like this big, this I don't know. I found it at the like Walgreens, right? And they had this in the makeup section. There was like 12 brushes for $6. So I'm going into the very edge, absorbing some of the pigment, and then I'll go off to the paper towel, wipe some of it off. This is where I meant about the application of pressure. So I'm literally just trying to, this is where you have to regulate it. You have to pay attention and you're reacting to what it's looking like. If you're unsure, what I do, after you absorb some of, so this is some of the air barbarian flesh. So this is from the Army Painter barbarian flesh. It is very diluted. It has, the viscosity is really, it's really liquidy, right? So I'll go in to absorb it. That's way too much, I could already see. I'll go into the paper towel, kind of spin it and dab it apart. Let me bring it in frame. Here's my paper towel. I'm gonna cover some paints I'm working on. So this is what I'm doing. I'm spinning it, and it's just taking some of that very hard moisture off of your the tip of this brush. Now you get to regulate just the highlighted areas. Like I was referencing about the light shine, I'm still keeping that in mind and just working it. If you're not sure of how it's going to come out, just try a little bit on your thumb. If there's nothing on there, absorb a little more. Look, now you can see that some of it was already it was a little more clear. You could see that it was showing off the pigment. Now when I shined the light on it, it was mostly on the shoulder, some of the pec, forehead, nose, to catch all that. There doesn't take much to bend the bristle, right? So with that in mind, I'm very tight circles within that area, and it already, I mean, you can see the difference. Here's the base model without highlight, and there's with that highlight. You can see the difference between the two. One has that more of a tan look, and the other guy, he's already starting to show off that very bright, vibrant skin tone. Very easy things to do, but I'm being aware of my I'm being aware of the pressure, the application. But just selected areas. The shine on this guy's head that's dangling on the side, I want to just do the very top of it. Let me adjust this real quick. That's how I was able to, let's see here. All right, so that's how I'm able to bring this into that top shine area. So I'm kind of focusing on the knee a bit. Very selected areas. He already has that wash on him. I want to, like, after I'm done painting them, I'm going to come back and do like the riders, like their eyes and things like that. But when, like I explained, when you're batch painting, you kind of want to just get through the process. Make them look good for the table. Get them out there, show them off. Base them. That's definitely one thing I want to do before they go onto the table, is try to base them. So I'm using this is the actual tone I'm using for the lighter stuff, is the Kislev Flesh, and then it's Barbarian Flesh. So it's either darker or lighter, right? I base it with rose, You can see that it's very rosy, orangey color. And then and it's up to you what kind of a highlight you want to give your guy. If it's, I mean, you could look at the difference of tones. Once you add a agrax earthshade, that will tint the tone in the brown direction, like the darker, not so muted, but it does give it a very darkish direction, right? But if then you use a crusader skin, you're gonna give it more of that red. So then you might, after you lay down the wash. So this is the step. I have a video showing the step, but it's first the rose. So brown rose, then you choose your highlight, whether red tint or the brownish tint. Then you choose your highlight on top of that with a dry brush, just to the areas that you want to have that light source. So if these guys are riding in a sunny day, I might go with something like the Kevlar flesh. If you're gonna give them just like a regular, you think about the time of day, right? If it's darker, like towards the night, if it's kind of, if you want to do some now, if you want to break it apart because you want some guys to be able to lighter tone, some guys will have the barbarian flesh highlight. That's this step now. So you kind of start. I mean, this is my recipe. So there's so many different base skin tones you could start off with. There's one that has a little bit more of a brown, orange, yellowy tint, but it still all kind of revolves around the same contrast, right? Or that depth. There's that burgundy-ish brown color. I just felt like the brown rose, keeping in mind that I'm going to add a wash to it, it's going to dry up a certain way. So this guy, compared to, look already where he's at. So these two dudes, they went about two different directions. I'm using the Kevlar flesh and then the barbarian flesh. So after I gave them their wash, certain details started to stand out. But I'm thinking about what I'm matching their vest with, what are they wearing. A handful of them are going to be this direction, another hand are going to be this side, so that when you put them together, it doesn't look like one overall brown army that's coming at you. It's very balanced. So again, it's just simple going with my brown rose, vallejo brown rose. Then I will add my wash, whatever I decide to use, agrax or the crusader. Then I will determine which highlight I want to go with. But for sure, these are my highlight end steps. So let's keep working on that end step and see that transformation. I have for the horse, I'm going to use the wider brush, which is more for like the eyeshadow and things like that. But the tighter areas, like on the rider and the head, I'm using that smallish one that I know I could just do some circles. Now again, this guy is might have been decaying if it's a head that's been hanging out for a while. So I can give it maybe a greenish camo wash. That'd be pretty cool just to give it that rot feel. The white beard definitely stands out, or the grayish beard. Careful with it not being matching the rider, because I want it to be obviously like it's a sick feeling. I'll add some red somewhere just to give it, like for instance, I have some red out here. I'm gonna use the layer brush here I was using. So I'm gonna go back into my red. This is which red am I using again? Oh, yeah, mephiston red. Really nice bloody red. And the very tip of it, I'm just gonna add a few hits like off the mouth. It's very, the value of this red is very bright. So maybe off the eye, like you just got clocked. Little details like this, I mean, it gives it that gore slash fresh decapitation look. A few abrasions on the like off to the side. Mix it with some browns just to give it that darker tone. If you can see this, I'm gonna try to get it into frame. This is all like the fun part, that you could just kind of wing it and just get creative with where you want to place what, but it just kind of, that little bit of detail in the head just makes it look like, yeah. So my list here, I will definitely put a list together um, and that way you can see what. That's why I'm trying to keep it all. I'm trying to keep it all together with oh, safe. With what I'm using for these guys. Like what's my go-to paint. This is just something that I found that it's a very balanced paint route for the Targaryens. So yeah, the paint list, I'll have what I did for flesh, and then the browns that I use for like the belts. So now that I did the belt, I'm gonna go in for my the speed paint hardened leather. Now I want to do an actual breakdown video, so if this doesn't, you're gonna think of sorry, let me get a wipe you out real quick. I want to do a full overview where it's not as much talking and more so doing, because by now I think I would have been on horse number 3. But I mean, it's the explanation is fun because I'm able to give you guys an idea of what how you can play with different techniques. The hardened leather, once I layered that very dark like snake bite leather, I'm gonna use the hardened leather wash. It's a speed paint. I'm not solely gonna depend on it for it to be my final color. What I want to do is everything I did with the browns, the darker browns, I'm gonna hit it with the leather so that when it dries, it gives it that very fast change of contrast. So these are all like cheating tips, right? Like this is all things to make it look tabletop quality. You see how fast the browns, they just started to pop. And very carefully just doing, the more you start getting a model into like a completion stage, that's when you're a little bit more careful with how you're applying things. When you're base coating, it's okay to hit areas that you're obviously gonna go back and fix. But the more you're getting to that final result, you have to then be a little more precise with the painting, for sure, because then you can ruin some stuff and go back to square one. I'm gonna have this is the wash I use, like the agrax earthshade, to break the tone. I'll use that on the I gotta pull some more of this. I'll use it on like the saddle, because I did base it with that golden brown mixed with the shade. I mean, that's just gonna give it a very complementary shadow. So, and it does give it that brownish tint that I want. So it's kind of like just quick shade stuff, quick shade techniques. Yeah, so the saddle, I use the golden brown, and because this dries a little, I tend to find even when I put it out on the palette, you can see the Crusader skin will be a little bit on that reddish, very like transparent red, and then this is more of that dark brown, orange red, right? So that's what I'm going to use, because it's just going to help that the golden brown stand out on its own. For the skin tone, I can do this guy's since I did the highlights already, you can see where some of the top of like the knee and the thigh, all that kind of just it started to stand out. And there's some deep shadows. I'll just let a little bit more of that wash kind of settle in that area, because that is a shadow, so I don't want to have to worry about it being such a like bright part of this miniature. When you see it, it's kind of like you blacklining a panel. So if you can imagine the Gundam Wing models, they have all these panels, and people will drop ink into the panel to separate every single one so it doesn't look like white armor across. With the horse, I mean, what's to say the leg isn't running into the saddle isn't, where's the separation between the saddle and the horse? So when I talk about blocking colors, that's what I mean. I want to block in my color as my base tone step. I'm gonna block in all the colors in, right? So I consider a miniature ready to the next level once I feel like the skin tone is all blocked in wall to wall, one, like 2 coats, but like one solid like the one solid value, I guess you want to call it. the horse can be on its own. Like, that was my first thing when I airbrushed it. First of all, I spray painted black, zenithal highlight white, showed me all the highlights. Then I took out the airbrush and I hit the horse first. Then I shot the barbarian skin. I hand painted the cloth, and then I went in and started. So you see your work goes from spray paint, airbrush, brush, right? So then you're condensing all the work. Then you do your fine details, and now it gets narrow and narrow, and then you just fine point your painting, and that's when it becomes like that final product. So, like for instance, this guy's head, let me bring in the dangling head, next to the saddle, you can see a little bit of separation once I add the wash. Let me make sure it's the right frame. I'm adding the wash. Let me see, it's all right, it's cool. The wash is here. It's a heavy wash. Whenever that happens, you see it running into the head part. I'm just gonna clean it up. But it created this like dark contrast line that I wanted, so that now I can show you, it'll show where the head and meets the saddle. I'm going back into my skin tone, and then just taking that, pushing it back into that deepest recess of the head. Once that dries, you can go in and sharpen up the area just to kind of push that skin flesh, the tone into that. But that way there's separation. There's like the head, you see it resting on the saddle into the buckle. You're just separating everything. If you feel like a buckle or the rider himself, he's running into like it's hard to tell where it starts and stops, then try to apply the darkest points there. I'm shading with the I'm using the the Crusader skin on the most darkest area of the thigh from the back where he's sitting on the resting on the saddle, and then I'm just gonna like ever so slightly glaze it up into where that top region would meet that we just dry brushed with the dry brush, because I do have some pigment still on it. Then I'm going to push it back. So you see it gives a nice little gradation transition, the darkest deepest part of the thigh resting on the saddle, and then it's going to go into like the higher highlight. Light sources, that's going to be a key thing when you're trying to speed paint too, or you're trying to batch paint, because now you can have a light source and you'll just speed up the process of detail. So that helps big time when you maybe take a picture reference of the model you're about to paint, and it's a good idea to have that reference in front of you also, not just like a picture of your reference of horses. Take a picture of the model under good lighting, and let the lighting show you where the natural highlights would be. That's a good way to kind of break things apart also. So some of the wash is already dried. I could go back in and just sharpen some of the side of the head, just to give it that top highlight into the horse saddle. A little bit of the shade into the bottom of where the beard is from the mouth. This guy just looks beat up. He obviously lost a battle. And then if I need to boost up the beard a bit, I'm going in from that dark gray cloak color into a little bit of that off-white. And I just want to get the very top parts of it. It's not too much. On this guy's beard, I'll do the same. I'll go a little bit lighter on it, and this time I'll go from the off-white color into the black. because this is just gonna highlight some parts of the beard. Now you can see a little bit of that bottom lip kind of peeking out through the beard, so I can dab it just to, you know, a piece of that the flesh, just to kind of really like bring a little bit of accent. A few streaks following the hair position helps with the giving it like it has a certain hairstyle. These guys have almost like a weave going, certain like weave hairstyle. So I want to just dot the very tops of it, and I'll get to the shading once it dries. Now I feel like the brush has a little bit too much moisture, going back and forth when you're, so like right now I'm trying to jump around a lot of different colors, washes, things like that. So after a while it's a good idea to definitely try to dry the brush, wick it a few times, get the moisture off from that. And if you can determine if there's too much moisture, so it doesn't fall into the miniature and just kind of spread out too much. This is the brush gunmetal. I want to start doing the top of the plate here. I could do some of the sword while we're at it. But yeah, when you're jumping around with a lot of different pigments and washes, and you're consistently cleaning your brush into the water, it's not just about going into your paper towel to spin and dry. You want to make sure there's not like I guess too much moisture still trapped in that the brush. Now, this is all very based still. It's not like I'm not doing the highlights yet. Go into some of the bronze colors. This is the layer Castleaxe Bronze. I'm gonna start pulling some of this out, and then I'll mix it with the weapon. Where's it at? So weapon bronze. I'll do this on the hilt. So this guy's sword is kind of sticking off. Now for those local players, there's a Song of Ice and Fire tournament this Saturday at Ender's Games. What time does it start, Preston? You probably know a little bit more of the details than I do. A little bit of edge highlights off of the top plate, just to give it some like maybe corrosion or rust effect. Back between the gunmetal color and then the that copper, I will do that front. It has like the front belt buckle, and it's just to kind of highlight it a bit. These guys do have a few metal pieces I like to bring out. Just buckle off to the side. some of the metal's gone, we will do some more of that top highlights. Just a few hair shines just to give it like the natural shine hair effect. Side of his beard, just so it's not too dark. Just gonna, it's almost like you're just, the raised areas, I'm just kind of dotting it. And it does help bring out some of those details. Using the side of the brush just to capture or for it to grasp whatever is like the raised details. I'm gonna go in some of the hand like gripping the sword here is still primered because I was really like dot spraying with the airbrush, so I wasn't trying to get the fine detail. And then there's the side here where he's gripping the horse. And these guys are just like gripping onto the the horse hair. There's no rings or nothing. The horse hair, leaving it black. I want to, a lot of the wash that I already applied is kind of drying up, so I can, if I need to apply another coat of that, you definitely can. So now it gave the saddle, not only, it kind of gave it that like burlap brown with the golden, so it's the golden brown from Chimera, and then I went ahead with the hardened leather to give it that darker wash effect. So I did apply some new let me see, where is it at? I just applied more skin tone onto the hand a bit, so I'm gonna put out a little bit more of this wash just to kind of cover those areas, so that way you can kind of see the difference. Like the fingers will just kind of stand out a bit, and this guy's hand on this side. I want to add a little more darkness or depth on the side. I definitely can, and I'll just keep it all in one angle. So with the dry brush, highlights of the hair and beard, and then we have under the armpit following up to the elbow. All this is all, you know, a lot of it is just small tricks that we did. I'll grab this is the agrax earthshade and give this guy a little bit more of that sunken eye socket, and it goes right over that red I just added to him. Use some of the black mixed with the darker brown, and I'm going to kind of just hit the back of the horse ears here. Same thing with right under the colors of the house. I want to kind of, like where he sits, I want to make sure it's all nice and, I guess, cutting the color to separate it, like I mentioned. So dry brushing the horse. Some of the golden brown mixed in with this that snake bite, the snake bite leather. Again, I want to test it just to see how much of the moisture is kind of pulling off, and I'm just soft brushing it, applying upward motion. So I'll do a little bit so you can see the transition, and this is the part where you kind of have to regulate it. If it needs a little bit more of the, it's your call at this point. A lot of painting that consists of it being your call. You have to react to what the paint's doing, and how it's, once it's making contact with the miniature, what is it looking like? You know, I want to give it, this guy, his like the horse, a very, like the glistening coat, where it's the dark brown, the chocolate, and then it like that dark muted brown, and I'm gonna go highlight it with a golden. It's funny because we use this same golden brown on the saddle, but yeah, you're able to give it a different hue and value when you're putting it under a different base coat. So from a light point of view, I know that this part of the top thigh would definitely shine. So I'm brushing and then pulling it down. So it definitely gave it that different kind of, you see that difference? So here's what it started off, very muted. And it kind of gave it that nice natural, and this is the part where you can kind of regulate it. So one side was kind of reddish, dark brown, still a muted tone. So again, it's probably light source, thinking about light sources. Working around the, try not to get a lot of the, I'm avoiding the tail at the moment because I want to do something different with it. We have the dry brush is kind of, the way I explain it to people, it's kind of just, you know, circular pattern, and working this. Let's see. Cool. So Joe posted a recent. Make sure to put in your IG so others can check it out also. He was working on some Hero Quest undead characters, and he just finished. He had a work in progress / finishing up the model. You guys check it out. Working on basing, things like that. It is black hair, so I'm going to try to just give it like a white highlight or like an off gray tint. It's nice to, you can make your own grays. It's nice to find a solid color though, because then you can work off of that. So if I'm going to use black, and then with the hair, just going to kind of dry brush a little bit. This catches the raised surfaces, so it's nice to change the contrast between that darker, the black hair going up with a gray tone. Then you can start messing with some shines. So it's still monitoring and you're kind of be aware of the pressure application, because then you decide how much pressure you're applying to the area so that it's almost just building up that gradients little by little, or the value. This is like your value sketching, right, with a dry brush though, which is something that it's a pretty cool technique to do. So if you want to bump up the contrast of white, sounds good, Joe. Thanks for joining in. You have a good night. Hope you're able to continue the hobby for the week, and we will stay in contact. A little bit on the hooves, the bottom parts, just the front areas. So it started off black, and now with the gray you're able to mess with the value. If you want a little more white on the tip, on the edges, like the very raised area, the surfaces. Do a little bit on the boot, since we have that. I already bumped up the contrast of how much white I want to use. And then if you feel like you can definitely still use a wash on the hair, like a Nolan oil or something, just to hit the recesses, and you can move on. Just a few areas here. Let's try to do something with the eyeballs here. So I'm going to the spotter brush, and I'll just dip into the black here. This is the part that I wanted to show what you can do with a spotter. I'll make sure I'm in frame. You guys see that? A little higher, lower. Cool. So we go here and just dotting the eyes. Let's see here. So precise. This spotter is, I'm so glad I found it. I mean, I've seen them before. It's one of those things that you don't care to pick one up because you're always just using a tip of a fine detail brush, like something that you use for the, has like a very nice point to it. But I'll tell you, this is almost like cuts that work in half. Because all you're doing literally is just spotting it. You're dotting and I'll do this for, I'm gonna do this for all the warrior, their actual, like their faces and things like that. And then a little bit of the nostril to give it some depth. So the two black eyes, nostril on this side. And go into this off-white. And I'm just gonna dot the, I wanna make sure I'm in frame here. Dot the back end of it and the front. So it gives it like an actual, the horse's eye, which you can choose one or the other, or just give one dot, but I feel like that gives it a little bit more something to stand out. And I'll do the same to the other side. You see how it's easy? It's almost like just dot and go. When you're batch painting, it's all about being efficient. So that just looks, there you go. Little dots in the eyes. Now imagine that throughout your whole army. It just little details like that makes it look pretty neat, and it stands out, which I like. It's not a hard white. It's just something to. That's like, oh wow, you have the miniatures horse done also. Go into the gray and do a little bit of the front end of it. And I can darken up some of the chest area if you need to. There's some areas that, like for instance, make like a two-tone horse. I've seen a lot of the variations of the models painted where people will do like the, you know, spotted horse, things like that. I think it's pretty cool. Like I said, the fantasy models, I feel like you have so much room, so much play with how you want to paint them. It's so much easier to kind of just take your own spin. And I'll go back into the bracers, add some more brown to it. This is kind of when I start, like I said, the models, you start to get more precise, and right, so that you, like I said, you start rattle, then you go down to the airbrush. If you don't have one, you use your brush, but it's just getting narrow and narrow, like the precision. And when you start finishing the certain areas that you're blocking off from paint, whether it's wall to wall or not. And I will, this is kind of I don't know, example, but I want to do, like for instance, I want to do the swordsman, and I'm gonna do like the other, there's different sculpts and different poses, but they all start about the same, so that's what I kind of want to show off. And kind of like the steps that I do for this batch painting process. Now I haven't done much with the side, the sheath and things, so little by little just kind of building up the different values. While I have the golden brown with some of the darker brown in, I can do some edge highlighting to give it that authentic leather for like a good highlight. I spent a lot of time trying to find cool different new techniques of doing the leather texture, and that's one thing that you can do while the paint is wet. If you're doing a darker brown, and going with that lighter golden brown and just blend the two, almost like just instant wet blending. So this is like an example of what that edge highlight would be. Now he has the bow on his back. Maybe do white on the like bone tips, but I'm just gonna kind of dot line some of the handle parts. It's kind of like a wrap. It has like a leather wrap on it. And bring out the skin tone a little more now that it dried up, and brighten up the back a bit. So you see, you find your range as far as paint goes. What's your comfortable range from point A to point B in tight areas with using your posture of your hand and position, the precision of like your posting and things like that, where your point of contact. That's something to keep in mind as well. But this Saturday there's a tournament for Song of Ice and Fire, and these Targaryens will be there. So you can see them. If you will be attending, you can see them live. So, what time does that start exactly? Do you know, Preston? You have the deets on that? Maybe if any other local people see this or want to go by and check it out, it'll be at Ender's Games. I will not be playing, but my Targaryens will be there. They're not mine, but they're painted by me, so they're kind of like mine. But no, this is a army for Adam. This is Adam's Targaryens. And so he's going to be rocking these guys. You'll see them there on the table. Doors open at 12 noon. If you guys want to go check it out, get into the game, or if you are into the game, contact someone here local, Ender's Games. They will have the tournament going on. It'd be a cool time to go check out what it looks like competitively if you haven't played A Song of Ice and Fire in a competitive standpoint. Yeah, I wish I can go. That'd be fun. Oh, 12:30. There you go. Yeah, he's an awesome dude. Yeah, I wish I can make it. Fortunately, we have a lot of the family stuff going on this weekend. You can notice a lot of the flesh wash is drying up, so that's your chance to tighten a few things around the thigh. Shadows you want to add, things like that. Now is the time. Let's see here. It's hard to get, you could see a pink tone right away when you start adding flesh colors to any model. And to get rid of that pink tone, you start building like one of the easiest ways I found was building off of the wash, let that dry, then come back in highlighting with the dry brush, but choosing which tone direction you want to go. Then you could obviously use your fine detail brush to bring out a lot of the details. Like separating the fingers, things like that. And then the back of their colors, I have that burgundy color. I'm just going to blend it into that red, mephiston red. And then I want to just dry brush the very ends of it. The burgundy adds for a really good base tone color for the Targaryen colors. Their house. Pushing the dry brush in the direction towards the rider just to give it that kind of a natural highlight. You can go in and edge highlight everything, but if you're just trying to get through it, then you'll definitely want to just kind of get the raised areas. The horse, you can shoot a wash just to bring back some muscle definition, or with the dry brush, I bumped the contrast a little more, just on like the very raised areas of its muscles. So it is a controlled dry brushing. You're just kind of trying to bring out details value sketching. Give it an underbelly that's a bit dark so I can then really bring out the top brightness. Dry brush blending. I have that really fine point spotter brush, and the few leather straps that I see, I can go ahead and just put some hardened leather in there. Gives it a natural shade. The thing about the spotter is that it's very front only, a little bit of that bristle, so that means that you have the possibilities of it drying faster, like the paint. So you have to work a little quicker and be a little more precise. It's a good way to kind of get precise edge highlighting. Work on the beard a bit. Yeah, this wet palette is really holding up. It's one of the first times I decided to actually bring it out to use, just because of the wider. I know there's some wider areas or wider palettes that you're able to find. I just didn't want it to be over taking up my area. I'm just trying to keep everything within that frame. I might do like a palette cam off to the side or something, just so you can see what's going on with it. But it is nice to have the things you're going to use, have it out, just because you can move from one to the next, or let one dry, bring out another horseman or the sword, whatever you guys are working on, and like the model, and then it's just quicker transitions with the same color scheme. Because one by himself, I mean, you have to, you can really break down one miniature, right? But if you put a bunch of them next to each other, now you have so much more to see, and the details of how you went about breaking apart the colors, the transitions, and just from the natural light, I can see that this paint is drying up kind of glossy, so I can shoot it with a matte varnish and or like a satin, and then I can choose where the gloss, I'd want the gloss, like, because they have, you know, the actual bottle, the gloss, so you can be a little more precise, like if you want shine hair, things like that. That's definitely something you can do. So I want the blade to shine if I want it to shine, and where exactly. So I can add my own whites to the blade where I feel like it can use like my non-metallic metal of it. Little details just from the front and back. The golden brown is a really good highlight. It's a really good base color. For instance, this strap here. If I just want to highlight one side of it, the buckle. Adds like a little gold, that yellow gold tint. go back with that pale color over the top of this guy's head. This is kind of a glaze consistency, so I want to blend that pale look, and it definitely separates color between what his skin tone is versus the guy's his leg that's right next to it. So at this point I'm just trying to glaze shadows and things like that. So like I said, I want to separate tones and different variations. This is when you start picking things apart that you want to highlight a little bit more, put some more details that really stand out. So I would move from here, start working on what I would do for the base, let this fully dry, come back and just bring out details as far as what the next highlight would be. But if you have 20 models to do, this would be something where I would be ready to just show off. And then explain to my opponent that next time you see this horse, he's going to look like a stallion champion. So I can still kind of highlight some things that are dry. Get some of the white here, off-white, to do the details on this bow on his back. That is going to help the bow not look like just something random on his back. It's going to really stand out. So it has like these bone spikes that I want to make more so an eye attention getter. The fact that this white isn't off-white, you can get away with it being a bone color. I love that it's beige. And I used it for the white in the horse's eyes. I'm all about versatility with one color. But I hope you guys understood what I meant about trying not to, well, try to separate the tones on a miniature. If it is this, like one brown horse with a guy that's like brown, tan, with a bunch of leather bits, saddle, a lot of details, break everything apart. So this color scheme, you can carry it on to the next guy and change a few things. So literally like mix and match. The way you mix and match colors, do that with these guys. Make their straps darker on the next guy. Make the switch what's black, switch what's brown, and then you'll have guys that are not, it doesn't look so repetitive. So I think that's what's nice about our army, is that, yeah, they could be on the same tray. Like for instance, we got the swords. And on the tray, this is one, I mean they all look the same, right? Because I base coated them the same, but I'm gonna add details that are different to every single one. Same thing with the horses. Let me show you a tray of horses that are complete, just to show you an example of what I meant, compared to this guy that I just painted. So I'll move the wet palette out of the way. Let me see here. These guys' tones are different, and you can kind of see what I mean. The colors of the house, I want them to stand out, obviously, but I wanted to put different, like different details. The horses, dry brush them different. Some a little lighter, some a little darker. The models themselves, some guys have the sculpt. It helps that they have, you know, very different pose, and so I'll show you. That's kind of the. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Preston. They that's the goal, though. I want them to. They're obviously the same faction. The swords. These guys are a little bit more heavy armor equipped, and but I still want them to carry their colors somehow. That was the goal. So I'll change their tone of the skin tone or details, but the swords, like even though it's like a different unit on ground, things like that, I want them all to have that Targaryen, like, carry your flag proud color. And so that's on the tray. They look great. Let's say you mix and match, you have your attachment, you have, you know, there's horses all look different. The guys it looks great when they're different poses, right? And then you have your archer and another sword on a different model tray, and across the board it just looks great. So that's something that, while batch painting, something to consider. I'll try to put together a list of things, and I'll post it either on the I'll try to put it up on the Twitch, or if not, I'll try to put it out on the Facebook or Instagram, which is just this here, paint and ink _miniatures, or the YouTube channel. I'm gonna go ahead and, so for instance, for YouTube, under the description, I will go ahead and put like the list of all the stuff, and same thing with brushes and the wet palette. I mean, everything. So look forward for that, and maybe I could break everything down as far as what I did for flesh, the tone steps, the variations, the belts, their colors, things like that. So it's kind of just of a breakdown. But so while taking this into consideration, right, I know that like all these guys they're primed and ready to go. That was my first step. I want them blocked in. I want them primed, base coated. Everything looks solid. I can put these all on trays. They look, obviously the bases aren't done, so that stands out. But the miniatures themselves, there's paint on them. There's a coat of paint, and that's what's really going to make them stand out. Now the way you start finishing them up, so this is that wider spectrum. If you think of a chart, right, you have the wide spectrum, which is the spray paint, the base coats, the highlights, like the zenithal prime, and then they all look black and gray. I start their color process wall to wall, which is like I pick apart all the little bits, like their leather straps, if they have the armor, what they're carrying. Like, you guys can tell the difference when I'm doing the riders that are just, they're holding a sword, maybe they show a little more skin tone, that these go by a lot quicker, but then they have a lot of little things that they're carrying. Even the guy like we worked on tonight, he has, there's certain things like that I want to pick apart just to make them look a little different, and just gruesome too, because that little bit of detail is just, these guys look just mean. So that's, if I create a list of how I'm gonna approach this off the start, I didn't have a plan. I just seen the box art. I thought of the colors of the house, as in the game it's nice to see colors in unison with you know, what they're representing, and so I just wanted them all to carry that same colors. So I kept that color aside, which was the burgundy highlighted with the mephiston red. So this is going to be for all their colors. Now the closest outcome is me doing their highlights on the burgundy with the red, and then it gives it that dark Targaryen house color, right? After that, I then pick apart the horses if they are horseback. The ground soldiers, I'm going to do something with changing skin tone variations. That's a little detail for them. Their armor, obviously, they're going to pick up all from the same pile, so that's going to be somewhat the same, maybe a little bit different with jagged or details. But like I explained this chart, right? There's no real plan until you start working, and then you say this unit, each one needs to have something different to separate. And I'm not saying every single model. I mean, you can make every single model a different, detail. But we're talking about batch painting, right? These guys are gonna get abused. You're gonna in and out of your bag on top of the table. They're gonna be casualties. You put them off to the side, they fall. You put them, their game is over. You put them back in your bag. You're transporting them. They're gonna get beat up. So what you want to do is something that it's first of all to coat protect them with the varnishes, seal them up, but it's something that the detail is going to be with the slightest changes between units. So I mean it's hard also when the skin or the sculpts, some of them are very similar, but from a glance on tabletop they look great. I'm just saying, I'm just not even these models, other models I've seen that are at this same level, that are not too highlighted. They're just very like step 1 or stage 1 painted. They still look great on tabletop because they are surrounded by others, right? You pick one apart and now you're just staring at this one guy next to another guy. What separates the two? Is it the horse, right? Is it with the gear they're carrying? What you paint different? Now you put a whole unit, right? Now they each have their own characteristic, and I think that's a little bit more flavor or character to your model and your your unit. So as a starter set, I'm trying to push out the number, right? You're trying to paint the full starter set. The longest parts I'll tell you is going to be, besides what I'm covering, is the basing, because to some people it's easy, but I mean, how much time and passion are you going to put on your base? That is what really, deciphers all that. Same thing with your miniature. If you have a tendency to put a lot of work into the miniature, then yes, it's going to take you longer. So with that said, you look back at what you have left and you're just like, I've got to speed this process up. I got to speed it up. What do? Break down your list. Break down what you can change different. Are they going to have, like the saddles are going to be, for the most part, same color. Every once in a while, every 4 or every, like, I'm going to do 4 this color, 4 another shade. I'm literally just mix and matching. So you'll see like some saddles will have a black or a darker brown. The horses' hairs, I mean, they're all the horses have either the paint, where's it at? Leather brown, or I used, which one was it? Okay, mild. So here's your 2 different variation of horses, right? The 2 different tones. So you're either going to have a brighter orange horse, or you're going to have a very muted chocolate brown horse. So I'm going to maybe do 8 and 8, right, of each color. Same thing with your skin tones. Like I said, I'll have the some guys they're all going to start off with a brown rose, and then I choose my wash that's going to give the direction of the like that skin, that value where I'm going to go, whether it's the agrax earthshade or crusader skin. Do I want a brown tan person like tint to his skin, or do I want a reddish, been out in the desert riding all night kind of thing, or all day kind of thing? So this is one direction, this is the other direction. Now I go on to the highlight, which is barbarian flesh or the Kislev flesh again. So then mix and match them. So I'll do some with this, and some of the warriors on foot, like the swordsmen, some will be mixed with this, with agrax earthshade, or I'll put the crusader skin with this, and that little bit of tone value is going to change that look. And now you just individualize that one model to the next guy. When they're standing next to each other on the tray, your guy to your left, your guy to your right, they're all going to look different. I mean, it's going to be a pattern, obviously, but the one guy's going to be darker. One guy's showing a little bit more on his sculpt. The guy carrying his flag, there's a guy kind of shielding himself. He's you know, a lot of things are hidden. If you're batch painting and if you just want to crank out the models, don't worry about the shadows, the things under, right? Worry about what's on top. So use that highlight source of light, values of light. So if we have, like, this guy's light source is going to be different to the next guy that has a different sculpt, right? So I'm using all those to define where it's going to be, like all my highlighted dry brush areas. Same thing with this horse dude, this horse rider. He's going to have a little bit on the forehead. He's going to have, again, like the pec, chest, shoulders. All that's going to be your lightest value of your dry brushing. There's another guy that has a different pose, the guy with the archery. This guy had, so he has some things that, so this is how we can pick it apart. Let me show you guys here real quick, because this is a totally different pose than the next guy, is what I'm trying to say also. So let's bring this guy out so I can show you a little bit more of a focused dry brushing. So here's the guy that we're working on, and let's do him a different tone. Give me a sec. So, all right, so we have the barbarian flesh. This is the base and the lighter. So I feel like he has a lot more of the agrax earthshade, so he's a little bit more of that brown tint. So we can go, he's lighter, let's give him more of that pinkish barbarian flesh. Again, this is meant for air, right? So this is already pretty watered up. But we are going to get a paper towel just to absorb a lot of that moisture from the paint. It's just fundamentals of the paint. It was just made that way. It was created that way. So let's watch this guy in real time transform. So you see a lot of the moisture was, a lot of the moisture has been wicked off, and I'm thinking about where's the light going to hit. First, I'm going to start with the top of the forehead. Make sure I'm in frame here. Circular motion and just really tight brushing. The contact, that's what I'm kind of measuring. I don't want to go too hard on the paint, absorbing the pigment, because you can easily go from a little bit and then you try to go in because you think it. I mean, this is something you got to build up, right? So you have to gradually. This is what I meant about value sketching. Now I'm going to value sketch the highest, the bright, like the light source. So right now I'm value sketching where the light would hit. I said the shoulder, some of the pec, the chest, top of the forehead, the nose bridge. So that's something you keep in mind. And if you have a reference of your miniature in front of you, that'd be another way to see it. Like, where is it hitting from a really good photo of it in that angle. So I know the light is going to bounce off of here. So I'm going to kind of just imagine a line that I'm going to brush downward. And you can see it already is just like changing it a lot lighter, and it's just giving it that different transition. And that's the goal. I mean, I'm trying to see, make sure you're in frame here. The light's going to be bouncing off of this a little more. So tight circles, kind of brushing back and forth like you're dusting the miniature. Be mindful how much pigment is on this, the moisture. I mean, like I said, if you're unsure, try testing it, and you will see the value of the pigment on your own skin. Or if you wear a glove, that's all. Wear like a black glove so that you can see almost the that tone. But you know, it started off this darker side of the flesh, and now it's really picking up all those highlighted areas. Just keeping in mind, where's the light source? Is it just right above it? Is it off to an angle? What's going to be more exposed? What's to that light? And it gives it kind of like half two-tone. Underneath is like that armpit area. Obviously, it's not going to be. It's gonna be in the shadows, so I'm not. I'm just trying to focus this, and then you decide how much value you want to boost that. How much do you want to boost the contrast? If you are the value of that bright shine of his skin, and you see the two differences. I mean, and that's just the route that I feel like these Targaryens, they have that in my representation of it, I guess you see that difference. You can add wash to tint it, and carefully though, because I've mentioned in a few other miniatures that the wash is gonna you have chances to muddy up your miniature with wash. It is gonna dull it down. You do these bright colors, you throw a wash over it, and it's just a lot of the progress you made. If you're purposely doing it, then do it, but then you need to follow it up with something to brighten it up all over again. So it's application of pressure. You're monitoring. You're gonna kind of you have to measure that. Once your pigment is running out on your brush, you can kind of tell, and then you can kind of you could go a little more aggressive with the brushing and see. Now this guy had the other flesh wash. The tones are very, I mean, it's going to be the difference. It should be like, it can be subtle, or you can make it as vibrant of a difference as you want it to be. The subtle approach would be going after you base coated it, you washed it, and you slowly, with patience, build up that highlight of the light source. The aggressive way is you going in with harder paint on the brush, and then your outcome's going to be a lot faster, but then it's hard for you to really measure that value. These really tight, the circle makeup brushes is where it just helps you have that control brush effect. Because with a wider makeup brush, you're going to be grabbing things you don't want to on the miniature. The paint's going to spread out a little bit more. And these are kind of cheapy. So if there's, I mean, that the supply stuff I showed to reshape your brush, it does work on this because I've used it already. But sometimes it does, banana flay out, and at that point you want to get your X-Acto knife and just sharpen it again to just keep it at a nicer point. But these cheaper brushes, they can only get so sharp, they can't. It's not like this is a very wide compared to like our, if we have a base, like here's a base brush that we can use. So compared to this, it's round, but it's still kind of in shape as far as how straight it is. After a while, using it as a dry brush, I mean, this is what's going to happen to the cheaper synthetic dry brushes, whether it's makeup or your quote unquote, purposely used to dry brush. The brush is gonna get beat up. I mean, that's what they're for though. And shape it, trim the edges as much as you can before you start trimming the bristle itself, and then you're just gonna have to replace it. So another encounter of a dry brush, and this one's super soft, Filbert Princeton Summit, and this thing is a size 4 compared to a size 4 of a detail or a liner brush. This is their dry brush version of it, and it's just, if you could see the pressure, I'm barely applying pressure, and the bend of it is just so soft. It's still synthetic, but it's just such a soft dry brush. And this, I wouldn't use it for this yet, because look at the difference. I could get so much more of a controlled dry brush with the makeup for the eyeshadow versus this is which is actually meant for, you know, canvas. So I think this is meant for either charcoal, things like that. People use to blend charcoal. I could blend the miniature with the paint the same way I do with this. I would go in to whatever tone I'm going, and that's for this guy, and wicking off a lot of the moisture as much as I can into the paper towel until you see the opacity of it and how true of the value color. I'll go back into the miniature and then slightly build up that side. So if I want the sun to be hitting in one direction, I'm gonna hit, like for instance, it's shining off from the right side. That's the side I'm gonna make the most brightest, and then it'll blend into this darker shadow. If you want from this point forward to make those recesses or the shadows to pop out, you regulate your wash, which in this case I'll use the this is gonna be the Crusade skin onto. That's what I did underneath the other models, like the armpit area. So I'm literally just gonna one line down, dabbing it and pulling the ink, because this is technically the wash is like the ink, right? Then I'm gonna try to get some off of my hand, off onto my hand or my paper towel from what is in the bristles, and then I'm just gonna push it back into the shadow. Push, pull, you know, I'm basically going up towards it, which is absorbing some of that, and it just leaves you that nice shade. So you can probably see, let me see this here. Probably moving so much the camera's having a hard time to focus. But you could see that difference of that underbelly, like the shadow, right? And that just kind of shows where the light is. And it looks a little stronger on camera because the light is, you know, the lighting I'm using is very bright. But if I were to, you know, let it dry, go into it and push this outward more, and then follow it with the dry brush. So it's like a tug of war. So you are hitting the shadow, you're doing your highlight, and then you want to bring the shadow to base to bring the depth out of a certain area of your miniature. And what you do is they're gonna some point meet at that center point, right? You're just kind of going this way with the highlight. Okay, now you use a different brush and you're pushing that shadow outward. And if it's too far out and it starts, you think that it's looking a little like it's a little too much, then you get your highlight dry brushing and then you push that back into that darker area that you want it to stay dark. But in this case, I want that light from the sun or whatever the source, the light source is, to be from one direction, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. But on screen it does look, I feel like it's hard to, like, the picture doesn't do its justice. And then you start to, you know, use your black into the hair, because once you dry brushed, some of it did get into the hair. So I'm just gonna, if you want to cut that paint back into like that area. But light source, when you start messing with light source, everything just becomes, you can bring so much out from the miniature. And same thing with the horse. I'm doing the highlight. This is more of a grayish horse, right? It has like a gray brown tint. If I want to change things up, go into that beige. And you could tell if it has too much moisture, then just wick it off into a dry paper towel. Get a new one after a while. Switch these out real quick. There's a lot of little, like, this is the topic, is the batch painting, right? The fast painting, the get them done, put them on the table, have some fun with them. But there's, I mean, this is it's a process for everything. So the horse had kind of like a grayish tone. I'm just, again, thinking about the light source. that I just put on the rider. So I'm gonna match it, the same light sources onto the from the horse. Circles, and I'm just kind of pushing them up into a certain direction just to kind of like shoot out that where I think the shines would be, and it really does bring that glistening horse fur kind of like the coat of the horse. So I'm thinking about like the top of the back end of the legs, and then it goes into like a darker, deep recessed shadow. And then I'm thinking about the side of the horse's, the front leg, going up to the neck. Have a few dry brushes. Let me see where the other one went. Another dry brush here. After I do this, you could do like another, like either the agrax earthshade or more of a Nolan oil if you're going for like a harder, deep, rich shadow on this guy, or the horse at least. Just because that will go into like the muscle texture and bring that out. A little bit of highlight from the top end of the horse, like the top of the head. And I would repeat that same process, what you guys kind of saw, what you've seen with this, like the details. I would do the same thing with this guy, and then the next. So, I mean, in a night you can do like so many at a time. I mean, I know a lot of people aren't disposable to a lot of the time, like the hobby time, but if you're going to paint for 30 minutes, make those 30 minutes count. If they're going to be 45, 2 hours, make them count. I'm going to do exactly what I did now, but show you more of a breakdown through a video where I can just kind of narrate it and just work, so you can see the difference of the details and I can follow it. So I have one I'm working on right now with a battle tank from the Star Wars Legion, the droids, and that tank is it's about like 13 minutes, kind of a time lapse, but it's just broken apart. So I'm going to create the script for it about the processing of weathering bigger vehicles, plus the battle tanks. I mean, they're a larger base and surfaces, so a lot was done with airbrush. If you guys don't have airbrush, it's fun to get into an airbrush. Airbrush, a lot of people are scared to dive into airbrush technique because it is scary to think, how do I take care of it, or the aftercare, or it's just not working with me. It's just like everything it's just like painting with a brush, right? There's a technical side of it, and then there's a side to aftercare with your brush. There's ways to make your paint work with you, not against you, with an airbrush. That's why I've been using it more and more, because it's fun to experiment with it, and from that experimenting you come to learn an airbrush. From I would never, when I was done using an airbrush, I never really took it apart to clean it thoroughly because I was afraid I was going to mess up the adjustment. Now I can tell you, just by the feel, I can readjust the airbrush, and do quick little adjustments while you're working also, like know when to stop and things like that. But so that video is going to come out pretty soon, the breakdown of that tank, and then I'll also be doing maybe a highlight on these the swordsmen, and doing another breakdown of the horses. So, but once this video's out, I'm going to give a full breakdown of what I use. I'll make sure, because I have my list written down, because like I said, this is about 20 something miniatures that you're painting. You want to have that recipe of your like list of colors you're using, so that everything's within your reach, and you're just recycling those colors throughout the army, so together they really stand out. But I hope you guys were able to pick up some things from this video. Go ahead and make sure you're following. If you're just watching this now, there's the YouTube channel or this Twitch channel. So this next week won't be a recording. It'll be every other week on a Thursday. So, and I'll make sure to kind of put out some notifications for that, so that you don't miss it. Make sure you shoot me a follow. Go ahead, check out the YouTube channel. It's just Painting Miniatures, just like the sign here. On the YouTube channel, it'll have a lot of this, the lists of all this, what I've done here. It's been cool hanging out. Sometimes I know people will hobby while they're watching something like a podcast or a stream. So maybe you guys were doing that. Maybe you're now seeing this video after it's been published. So it'd be cool to, to interact if, if you're watching this on YouTube. Stay posted, keep up to date with what I'm going to paint next. I also like suggestions, so let me know if I'm having fun with the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures, but there's also fun stuff with Warhammer, the Legion, and like some of the off the beaten path miniatures that are just resin custom 3D printed stuff. There's a few things I want to do with art swap with different painters. So I'll be putting the details up for that. It's a project that I kind of set myself for this year, that I wanted to reach out to the local painting scene and also just the community in general. I want to have a shelf full of just miniatures painted from different people. My own miniatures from my pile of shame, painted by others, and we swap. So I'll have more details on that. But yeah, make sure you like, subscribe on the YouTube, Twitch, give me a follow. Appreciate that, you guys hanging out, checking these kind of the list of my things to do, and more so it's just kind of doing some raw painting live is very different than when you break it down. So I will have a highlighted video on YouTube about more so like my speed when I'm going from one miniature to the next, and what I decide when I decide that I'm ready to move on to the next. So I'm pretty excited to finish all these up, base them, and I'll put up all the on the YouTube. I'll do shorts, or I'll do the actual video of all this stuff up to date. So it's just right here, Painting Miniatures underscore miniatures for the any other of the Instagram things like that. So thanks guys for hanging out, and we will see you on the next one later on.